Hi, I'm Greg Teipel, and today we're sitting down with Ralph Guckian, who is a Korean War veteran. Ralph, thanks for joining us.
You're welcome.
Let's start off with where you grew up, kind of your early years.
I grew up in Bellevue, Kentucky, and that's practically where I spent my whole life till I got out of high school.
Did you have any siblings, or?
I had there was 6 boys and 6 girls in the family. Now I'm the only boy that's left, and there's 5 girls left.
Wow.
So there's 6 out of 12.
Now, were they in the service as well, or?
All my brothers were. Al, my oldest brother, and then Bill, the next oldest, then me, then Harold, then George, and Bobby, Robert.
Well, that's quite a sacrifice for one family to.
6 out of 6.
Wow, wow. How did you join the service, or were you drafted, or?
No, I enlisted. They, my 2 oldest brothers, Bill was in the Far East Command, Japan, and Al was in European theater. And along came Korea, and I really and honestly thought war was glamorous, truthfully, and I wanted to get in it. And I joined as soon as I got out. In fact, I left school a month early. I got to graduate with a class, but I wasn't there to formally graduate with them. But I did get my diploma and everything, and they recognized it. But I just wanted to get there.
So you joined the service knowing full well
Circumstances.
you were going to go to Korea.
Yeah, basically I wanted to get in it.
Now what branch were you in?
Started off in the regular Army, and I went to the airborne, went to airborne school. And when I went to Korea, I went to Japan. That's what I was in, the airborne, 187th Airborne.
Wow. Now, how was basic?
It wasn't bad. A lot of walking up and down hills, a lot of mud, and it was cold in the wintertime. I got there, and my last couple months was in the wintertime, but it was at Fort Knox also.
Fort Knox.
Right.
How about airborne school?
The 187th Airborne at Fort Benning, Georgia. It was warm down there. I liked that. But it wasn't, we weren't there long. They taught us how to get out and get on the ground, and that was it.
When you were in the service, when did you find out you were going to Korea?
I knew I was going to go to Korea before I got into service.
Before you even got in, but?
Well, as soon as we got in there and everything, they rushed us through basic and rushed us through jump school, and put us on, we were to fly to Japan. They sent us to, it was I know I wound up in Fort Lewis, Washington. We were supposed to fly to Japan, and for some reason they sent us to Fort Lewis and put us on a slow-moving boat, I would say, to go to Japan. And there's quite a few people on it, because I know I slept most of the time on the deck. And I didn't get seasick or anything, but there was a lot of seasickness, and I didn't want to get down in the hole where half of the troops were seasick.
Yeah, it would not be a good place to be,
No.
I would think. So from Japan, did you fly to Korea?
Well, we went to Japan, and I'm trying to think of where we went into. I think we went in to, I don't remember where we landed at in Japan, but I wound up in Beipu, Japan, down on Kyushu. That's where the 187th was stationed, and there's Honshu, and then Kyushu is the last large island in the 3, and it's the smallest of the 3 also. And from there we flew to Japan, flew to Korea, and that's when it was getting hot and heavy, and they put us immediately into combat.
When you got to Korea, what was your first impressions of the country, the people, the sights?
It wasn't nothing to what I expected. It was It was mud streets, shacks, huts. Pusan had some buildings, had a downtown, but there was nothing like the infrastructure that I was accustomed to. It was all mud, and the roads from one city to another, from Taegu to Pusan, was nothing but compressed mud and a little bit of gravel in it. The bridges were, you go across them, you could hear things rattling. You could tell where some of it was worked on and, you know, updated to a degree. But the rivers were really extremely wide and very, very shallow. And they all had people down on the banks, women down on the banks doing the laundry, with big rocks and a stick, beating the clothes to death.
When you got to Korea, what were your primary duties? Was there like more training before you went to the front lines?
Not a whole lot. It was just assembling and getting ready and getting coordinated and getting things in order to be pushed up to the line. And they trucked us up immediately. It wasn't long. And, you know, that was it. Up that hill, and that's where you stayed, and until you got run off, or, you know, got moved or something. You know, just fought them until you got run off, or fought them until you advanced.
And this might seem like a basic question, but where did you guys live when you're on the front lines? Is it home where you dug it?
Right. The P&A platoons, when they could, dug holes in the ground and made some resemblance of some type of shelter, but mostly it was just, you know, in a mud hole. And you got as deep as you could get, and there was a lot of rocks there. And you couldn't get too deep sometimes. And there was the foliage and stuff, there wasn't much in that area where I first went. There was some, but later on, as the war progressed, the hills were just bare practically, you know, from shelling and mortars and everything. But by and large, there wasn't much there for shelter other than digging and getting in a hole and getting as deep as you could.
Now, the weather, do they have seasons there, or?
Oh, they got seasons, all right. In the winter, in the summertime, you burn up. I mean, it is hot. 90, 110, 100 degrees. And then wintertime, when we got up north, 50 degrees below zero, and winds blowing about 30 miles an hour. Wow. So you can imagine how cold it was.
Wow.
That was up north later on, though.
You were up farther up north towards?
We fought our way up there, yeah, up past, up through Suwon, and I can't remember all the name of the towns, but it was up the west side of the peninsula, and Daejeon, Suwon, up towards Seoul, basically, and then past Seoul up to Uijeonbu. Uijeonbu is up where, pretty close to where the capital of North Korea is now and was at that time.
So you were actually in North Korea?
Yeah, we got to North Korea, all right.
Did you guys have any downtime, or did you get mail, or?
Well, we got mail, you know, when it was available, when they could get it to us. Downtime, if you got relieved, if an outfit came in and there was an order of relief, yeah, you got relieved and pulled off the line. But it was very, very, very seldom. Once in a while, they'd bring a shower tent up and hook up a shower station, and you get clean dungarees. But that was like, you know, once a month, once every 5-6 weeks. And then you dug in a pile of washed dungarees and look for your clothes, a pair of pants that would fit, and socks and shirts and so forth.
So the supply lines were there, but
well, they the laundry detail would do all the laundry, and they'd just bring the truck up and push it out in the pile.
And you had to dig for it.
You had to dig for something that fit.
And how about food and water and?
Water we had no problem with getting most of the time. Food, that was a flip up. Well, most of the time it was, well, I can't say most of the time, but unless you were off the line. And once in a while we got hot meals. Later on we got hot meals, but when I first got over there wasn't much time for hot meals. We just never got too many of them. Once in a while, like I say, most of the time it was C rations, K rations, stuff like that.
And how were they?
Crunchy.
Crunchy?
Sometimes you had cans of beans, beans with wieners in them, butter beans, hash. I can't remember anything else was in there except I do remember the hash.
Was that your favorite?
It wasn't my favorite, but it became that.
What engagements were you in, or battles, or?
I don't remember any. We were in Suwon, but see, that's, you know, I don't know any. I remember one of the battles up north when we got up there further, when we had a chance to reconnoiter your brain and get accustomed to where you were, because you never knew where you were. You never knew. It was just, you know, hill 610 or 540, or, you know, we got to take that hill, we got to take this hill. But it was up the west part of the peninsula, because it was hilly over there, and it wasn't big hills like it was on the east coast further north. That side was mountains, but we had hills and stuff, but it wasn't nothing like up north. But you never knew what confrontation you were in, because, you know, you never was told. You know, they just told you where to go, how to get there, and what to do when you get there. You know, take a hill, take this valley, secure this bridge, clean the town out, whatever it was. But I can't remember the name of the towns other than Suwon, Daejeon, and there was a bunch of cities over there. It was give it up, retaken, give it up and retaken 2 or 3 times. So they'd come down and get it back and push us out of it. They pushed the first troops that were there out of it, pushed them back to the Pusan perimeter. And that was in force when I got there, the Pusan perimeter was. And that's when I got there to start to break out of the Pusan perimeter. When MacArthur went up and landed at Incheon with his maneuver to circumvent the, get behind them, they kind of broke. They didn't break, but it was a hell of a fight. It was good battles, good shootouts up until the time that they found out they were being attacked in the rear from the Pusan invasion. And then they sort of started to, you know, to bug out and go north. And that's what the name of the plan was, to get them to do that. And they were supposed to come in from Incheon and cut them off. But they let them get up through the center and to the west of that area, and that's how they made their escape.
Well, Ralph, I kind of want to touch on the enemy. I know obviously you fought the North Koreans. Was there any other allies that the North Korea had?
The Chinese.
The Chinese?
Yes. They come in across the Yalu, and we didn't even know it at that time. And that's when we was up, and they had retaken Seoul. And all of a sudden, here comes the Chinese. They snuck across the border, and there's a couple 100,000 of them come across the border in gym shoes and carrying their stuff, because their supply lines were desecrated. And they just snuck in, and all of a sudden they popped up.
So you basically fought North Koreans and Chinese.
And Chinese.
Go
ahead.
Which ones were the
worst?
The worst, I guess.
Can believe it? The North Koreans were the nastiest and the worst. They were the brutalist. Everybody thought it was the Chinese, but really and honestly, what I saw was the North Koreans. They were just nasty. I mean, they brutalized people more so than the Chinese did.
So they fought pretty tenaciously.
Viciously, tenaciously, good, bad, and ugly. They just fought any way they could win. Civilians didn't make any difference. They slaughtered whoever they run across, their own people.
Were you ever wounded in any of your engagements?
Yeah, I got hit by a mortar. I didn't get hit by it, but I got the after effects of the mortar. It hit about 15 feet from me, and I tried to get down to get under the blast. It'll raise. If you get close enough to the ground, you can get pretty close to a mortar and not get hit. But Because it goes out, it raises up, and it blew me about 15 feet. It raised me up and blew me about 15 feet. I get shrapnel in my eyes, knocked some of my teeth out, knocked me cuckoo.
Now, were you evacuated to a MASH unit?
Yeah, I went to the battalion aid station, then I went to a MASH, and then I went to evacuation hospital and wound up in Japan, the Army Surgical Hospital in, I have to think of the name later of the town. Osaka Army General Hospital. Nice town. When I first went in the hospital, all I could see was charcoal burners running around. And I got taken care of and went back to Korea. And then I had R&R, rest and recuperation, and there was about 5 or 6 cities that you pick, so I picked Osaka to go back to. I went back, I didn't see one charcoal burner. Chevrolets, Fords, buses, all diesel and gas, and not, if I seen a charcoal burner at that time, it was a rarity.
Now, elaborate, what is a charcoal burner?
It's a car that's got a charcoal stove on the back of it. And they throw charcoal in there and generate gas, and that's what the car ran on. And you can imagine a bunch of GIs, what they would do to the back end. You know, you get your furnace back there on the back of the car, you know what they, and there's a door where they threw charcoal in. and everybody used to put their fires out. The GIs would put the charcoal burners out.
That's funny.
By the devious manner.
Now, you touched on that you got sent to like a battalion aid station or a MASH unit. Was that anything like
MASH?
MASH, the TV series?
I'll tell you what, that is probably one of the most accurate movies that was ever portrayed about Korea. It really, really, only there wasn't the giddy crap going on and the fun and kidding around that goes on in the show. But the tents and all the other stuff and the food and everything else, it was good care. And then from there, it's so authentic is what I'm trying to say, that those tents are, the way they're built, the way they're constructed with the mortar box doors on them, and the way they're set on structure, you know, wood structures and stuff, and the way they were heated. It's all pretty authentic, really.
So you didn't see any clingers running around?
I'd look for him. No clingers, but there was none of that kind of stuff going on. But they were run pretty efficient, really. I thought they were. I only stayed there about, I guess, 5 days. But the collecting station and the MASH, and then I went back in the back to a hospital, and they tagged me to go to Osaka. They put me on a plane and sent me to Osaka. It was all a matter of probably 2 weeks, but they finally decided that there was a surgeon due at Osaka that had all the latest equipment. The ophthalmologist came there, and I thought, they had me tagged at Osaka Zone 1, which would send me back to the States, but this guy got there with the equipment to take care of me. And I got taken care of, got healed up, got tagged, went back to Korea. Which I thought I had a ticket home, but I didn't make it.
Not so lucky.
They hit Zone 1, they had me tagged for Zone 1. That was the United States. So they told me.
Well, that kind of leads me to my next question. How long did you serve in Korea?
12 months. Well, I extended 3 months. You got, I don't remember the points, but you was supposed to go over there combat 6 months and get, I think, 4 points a month and rotate with 24 points. And then some female politician came over and said, "Oh, this isn't too bad. Why don't we up to 12 months?" So then, I guess it was 24, I don't remember the point, maybe it's 40, but I forget what the points were. But you got 4 months for combat zone. And she upped it to 12 months because she thought it wasn't too bad.
And then
And it stuck.
and
Wait a minute. She upped it to 9 months, I think. 4 months, 36 points you had to have to rotate. That's what it was. 24 and then 36. Yeah, she upped it to 9 months, not 12 months, but 9 months. But 3 more months in that place was like, you know, will I get out or won't I? It's like Vietnam was, you know. You make it, you make it. You don't, you don't. That's the way it was. And Korea had a lot of firepower. They said that there was more ordnance expended in the Korean War. I can't see this myself, but all the history channels and everything say there was more ordnance expended in the Korean War than there was in a total Second World War. European theater and the Far East Command. I can't believe that, but they say it's true.
no, that was our stuff, or
Our stuff. We expended more ordnance during the Korean War. We did a lot of artillery and, you know, ordnance. We used a lot of ordnance. But I can't see it being more than was used during the Second World War in both theaters. I just can't see that it amounted to that much.
now did the North, did they have a lot of firepower as well? Did they have?
They had firepower, but it was, you know, antiquated. Some of the stuff, you know, had the big old wheels on it and not mechanized, not much mechanized stuff. And they still put stuff with animals, you know, oxen and stuff. I remember one time they had a 129 millimeter gun, and we had an aid station set up right behind a cliff. And you went up the valley, up to the hills where the fight was going on, and the aid station was set right behind the cliff. We'd just come down off a hill with a bunch of wounded, and I got some shrapnel, a little bit of spics. But we come back, and it was getting dark, and they had automobile headlights out of the trucks and stuff on boards for operating lights. And they had 2 3/4 ton trucks out there running the trucks to power the headlights. And they were in there doing major surgery. And they started shelling stuff. And a shell come over that ridge, and at that point it cleared that shell. It just ran out of fire, you know, ran out of steam. And that shell rubbed right on that aid station, right smack dab on top, blew it all to hell. And that's when that buddy of mine got, no, that ain't when he got it through the knees. Somebody got it there and fell into another guy's arms. Oh, I'm hurt, and, you know, flopped right into another guy's arms. I don't remember who it was, but that was bad. That shell, you know, how could it come down? Because that aid station was right up against the back of that cliff. I mean, it wasn't 6 feet away from it. So, you know, when that thing come over there, that was the extent of its range, and it just dropped.
Now you mentioned you got wounded for a second time.
Yeah, there was just a little piece of, you know, scrap. It was on the perimeter of the blast, but it was a 129 millimeter shell. That's what the S3, I think, said it was. You know, they got the gun, but it's the only piece that was around there, so it had to be. Unless somebody stood up there and dropped the shell off by, you know, did it by hand. I don't know.
Now, did you get a second Purple Heart for that, or how did that work?
Yeah, they were get Purple Heart, but I tried not to have anything sent home. And when you get a Purple Heart, you get something sent home. You know, your son was wounded in action, and my mother would have had, she'd have died. Because when Al, every time my oldest brother got wounded, he got wounded twice in Europe. You know, she liked to faint it because, you know, she get a letter from the War Department, a telegram, you know, you're wounded and everything. So I tried to quill out, and evidently I did. I don't know, because I don't think anybody at home ever got a, you know, telegram saying that I was wounded, but I just didn't want anything coming. I'm scared the hell out of my mother.
I can understand that.
Yeah, we had a combat jump in Korea, but I don't remember the town that was jumped on, and I don't even remember the time of it, but I do remember how cold it was. It was cold, and I knew it was part of an operation that didn't want to take any prisoners. And I don't know if you want to put this in there, but it was called Operation Killer. No prisoners. Yeah, they didn't take no prisoners. They found one of my cousins, Schulteis, with his hands cut off, and his arm tied behind his back, and they're all mutilated in trenches, and we found nurses and stuff with the shovels, rammed up in their wound and all kind of stuff. It was really brutal. But that was the North Koreans. It wasn't the Chinese. But that's the way the North Koreans were. That's what I was telling you earlier, that they were just brutally treat their own people that way. Oh, that's when I hit the rock. I come down on a big boulder. Boom. My feet hit, and I hit on my tail. And they got me out, and they rolled my Parker up and put 2, 4, 6, 8 shots of Novocaine in my back. And the wind was blowing, and it was cold. And they rolled my Parker up and stuck the needle in, injected one, and then left the needle in there and hooked another syringe in. And I couldn't feel nothing for probably 3 months.
Wow.
But I walked out, and then a guy come along, it was the Marines, they come along, and they had a Jeep, and he had a windshield laid down with a cable cutter on the front of it. So they used to string cable, in the Second World War, basically. I'd never seen any of that in Korea, but he looked like Mulligan Dooligan, or whatever that guy's name was, that they drew them pictures, Mulligan's here, they always said was a nose sticking over the place.
Oh, the Kilroy?
Kilroy. That's what he looked like. He had a beard, and had a hat on, and I was cold, and I was hurting, and he's flying down the road, and I mean, he's, I don't know how fast he's going, but I know it was 20 miles over what he should have been going, because I was flying out of the seat all the time. And he's over there eating something. I said, "What are you eating?" And he said, "You want some?" And I said, "Yeah." I hadn't eaten for about 36 hours. And he hands me this thing, and he took a knife and cuts, I didn't know nothing. He cuts a piece off and hands it to me. He said, "Now, don't swallow it, just chew it." It was tobacco. I'm sitting over there chewing that thing, and then I'm doing like he is. And man, he hit a bump, and that tobacco went south. And then it came north with everything that wasn't in my stomach. I mean, I regurgitated for probably 3 hours. I mean, I swallowed it. The bunk of, this chew. But that was, but I don't remember where that, I can't remember the name of the towns it was north of. I know it was around the 38th parallel, or just a little bit north of it, but I don't remember what the towns were. I know somebody got on the ground first to take pictures, because there's pictures in history of everybody floating down. It was a 500-foot drop. You dropped out, chute open, you completed your swing, you were on the ground. Now somebody was down there taking pictures. Huh. It wasn't a Pathfinder. I had a buddy, it was a Pathfinder. It wasn't him. But somebody was down there taking pictures. And how they got there first, I don't know.
Now, the Pathfinders, those were the guys that went in first?
Yeah, they set up panels in their radio signals or lights or, whatever it calls for, that which way wind direction and approach and all that stuff. I never did get into it with Doyle. His name was Joe Doyle, and he was a feisty little. He was about 5'6" and built like a tank, and fought like a tank. And I mean, that guy was mean. And he and I were buddies. And but I never did know. You know, I know he jumped first, and they set up panels. They use lights at night, or they use radio communications to set up wind direction and so forth, and advise which way to approach and that kind of stuff with the lights and panels. They call them Pathfinder.
So what kind of planes were you jumping out of?
C-47s and C-119s. Fortunately, I got in the C-47s. The C-119, you went out the back door, and the stabilizer went across the back, and you look out there, and you thought, is this thing going to cut my head off? Because it wasn't 10 feet from you, and you went out that back door, and if you didn't drop quick enough, you'd get hit. That's truth, you know. But they keep climbing at a rate, you know, slow rate to clear everybody, but. You still, it's what they call I don't forget what they did call it. I know it was a death car of some kind. I don't remember what they call it, but there had been guys caught on that stabilizer across the back of it. Boom, go out and you shoot open prematurely, or you know, a delay or something, or you're updraft or something. You get caught right in that thing, and I don't know how severe it did kill you, but it killed you. I don't know how severe, you know, I don't know if it cut you in half or what, but I didn't want to hit it. And fortunately, I was in a C-47 or 46, C-47s. C-46 was the first ones, but C-47 was a stable, real stable plane. They used it in the Second World War to fly the Hump to China. Chennault, that's where they maintained, everybody flew the Hump, what they call the Hump, the Himalayas, and they used that plane. But I don't think the C-46 stayed around long enough. And the C-47 was a forerunner of the DC-3.
Yeah,
I think it was all the same plane.
Huh.
How many jumps would you estimate that you did?
Totally? Probably, hell, I don't know. There, the two there. I would say somewhere around 25, 30 jumps altogether between Japan, Korea, and trying to think of the name of the town down there in Georgia.
Benning, Columbus.
That's Columbus.
Yeah.
Yeah, Columbus, Georgia. Yeah, Benning. Yeah.
Now, did you have to do what, 5 jumps in training?
Well, you did more than that, you know, but 5 to qualify.
5 to qualify.
Yeah.
You have guys
Freeze?
freeze or.
Yeah. No. I've never seen anybody freeze, but I heard of them freezing.
A lot of guys breaking legs and.
On landing, yeah, there's a lot of casualties all the time. If you don't hit right or be prepared right, or you don't get rid of your sack quick enough, you can get a broken leg easy. But the big thing is, you know, dumping the load, dumping the sack. There's all different kind of, you know, down there it was open ground. You know, training is always open ground, but when you're jumping like they jumped in Germany, you don't know where you're going to land. You land in the river, you land in a tree, you get out to the tree, a tree branch runs through you, or you land on a branch and split you open, or, you know, there's all kind of stuff. Or you hit the wrong way and land and break your neck. There's just all kind of casualties.
How fast were you coming down?
About between 30, 28, 35 mile an hour. I'm coming down pretty good.
Pretty good.
At a combat jump. Because it's like stepping out the door and stepping on the ground. It's that quick.
Really?
500 feet, you don't have time to suck in 2 breaths. Because by the time you hit the pinnacle of your jerk, you start to come back down, you're on the ground. You better be running. I was always running.
But was it pretty exciting jumping out of the plane?
Yeah, yeah.
And you had to volunteer for that, right?
Oh, yeah.
That wasn't something they told you to do.
They wanted some of us to volunteer. They showed us pictures of the Rangers. And the one thing that just set me running in the other direction was these people were up on a hill, and there was a tower up there, and the platform. And this thing come down off that hill, and the cable come down, went across the lake. And there was a big, what's them big old trees down there, like catawba trees or something? I don't know what the heck they call them.
Yeah, I don't know.
Jody wouldn't remember the name of them. This thing was as big around as this room is. And if you didn't let go over that water, you hit that tree, because that's where it was anchored to. Had that cable coming right down, and then they, right there in the center, they brought it around and hooked it, you know, encapsulated the tree with a cable. And if you didn't let go of it right over the land, if you wait till you got over the water, you'd probably hit the tree. So you had to time it, and they told you, you know, you hit a drop line to hit the drop. You dropped at that point, and the momentum would just carry over over the lake. And I thought, you know, what fool is going to hold on to this thing? And you know, I don't know if anybody did hit the tree, but I'll tell you what, the possibility was there.
Wow.
It was too great a thrill for me. I didn't want that thrill. Because, oh yeah, the thing you come down on was just a pulley and a T-bolt and a wood handle through it. And you opened it up and locked that pulley onto the cable, and you held onto the wood handle sticking through this part that stuck down. And you know, the wood was good. It was hard wood, I guess, and I don't think you had any trouble with it breaking. But it's just coming down wouldn't have been bad. It was just letting go at the right time. If you freeze, and when you cross the line, if you didn't drop, you didn't let go, you'd hit on the other side of the lake, and the lake wasn't all that big. And you were coming off of that thing at a pretty good clip, because that hill was probably, oh, I'd say a good, it's better than a quarter of a mile, and that tower looked awful small. So you got a good head of speed up coming down off of that thing.
So that was like the forerunner of the zip line now.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
That's everywhere.
Yeah.
Huh.
I mean, them people are nuts. Of course, they don't have the possibility of smacking into that tree or hitting, if you don't let go right. I guess that zip line that comes down and comes up, you lose speed and you come up and somebody grabs you or something, I don't know. But that was my experience with the Rangers. I regretfully declined, really. Nope, not for me. And then you get a good heavy firefight and you're out of ammunition. And that happened quite a bit. You run out of, you get in a firefight and you don't beat them back, and the firefight lingers and you're down to the last clip or down to the last magazine. You know, you get antsy. But we always seem to manage to survive. Either, you know, getting out, slipping off the hill. There's a lot of times, you know, we got beat off of hills. I mean, and maybe we come off the hill, we didn't have no ammunition. And some of them hills, you know, you fight your way down them, and you fight your way up them, and then you fight your way down them, because they'd circumvent you and get around behind you, and that was their big main thing of doing, was getting behind you. When they come over, when the Chinese come over, and they was pushing the Marines and everybody back south down to Hangnong and the places where they evacuated from, they got in behind some of the guys and some of the outfits and just annihilated them. And there was one place where they got in I don't know if they got behind them or not, because the artillery people were actually firing the 155s and the 90s and the smaller pieces, the field pieces, the little 75s, and bore sighting them. I mean, they didn't range them or anything else. They just opened the breech and looked down the bore and threw a package in there and let it go.
Wow.
Bore sight, what they call bore sighting.
That close.
Oh yeah, yeah. There was no, give me the range, the elevation or nothing. It was open a breech, take a peek, slam something in there and fire it.
Leaving Korea, you mentioned before point system.
Mm-hmm.
They would find you and say,
Oh, you knew when you were what they called FIGMO. Friggin', I got my orders. That was the content that only wasn't FIGMO, but it's FIG. I don't know what it is. FIGMO, I got my orders. And you were FIGMO. And most of the time, or sometimes, guys that were, a week to go, they'd take them off the line if they could be relieved or be not be missed, be secure enough without him, just to keep him from getting hurt, wounded, or killed the last week, and the last day or something, get bombarded or hit with mortars or something, and not to get to go home. So they usually, the company commander usually pull you off the line. I say usually, if he's a good guy, if he could, that was the circumstances. It wasn't something that automatically happened. You might be in a pinch someplace where they couldn't afford to let you go, but if they could do without you at that time, most of the time they let you, get off the line, take you out of the front line anyway.
Tell us about when you rotated back to the States. Did you still have time in the Army to serve?
Oh yeah. Yeah, when I got back to the States, first we went to Japan and we come in through Sasebo and by ship from Korea to Sasebo, and I spent some time there, and there was something come up, and something about specialist school, and I thought it was something that was going to be, top shelf exotic stuff. And there was a place called Etajima, and it was the old Navy, Japanese Navy training school. It's like our Annapolis. It was an island actually, and there was a big building there. And there was 2 floors, I think, and up on the roof were places where if they had prisoners, they'd take them up there and chain them. There was chains up there to chain them in the sun, in the summertime, in the wintertime, I guess, too. But it wasn't too far from Kuri, Japan, which was on the west coast, or the east coast of Honshu. Kuri, K-U-R-E, Japan. That was their big naval base where they did all the repair work and everything. And it was huge. They had some big, equipment there to take care of battleships and stuff. I never saw any of the dry docks or anything there, that I guess they blew them all to heck. But the British had that was part of the British camp. It's where the British were stationed. And we used to go over there and play cards, and there's a fellow that I got a picture of, and those pictures I brought, he was I gotta call him a card shark. He dealt cards at the Yorkshire in Newport when he enlisted in the Army. He was drafted, and he could shuffle cards 3 or 4 times and deal 5 people at a table and deal any kind of, and he knew he'd give you 3 full house, he'd give the next guy, 2 pairs or whatever he wanted to deal. He could shuffle that deck 3 times and come up and deal that cards out. So we went over and played cards. Kind of cleaned the limeys out.
Well, that kind of leads me to a question, kind of a lighthearted question. Do you ever get in any trouble in the service?
Yeah, a little bit. I had a guy, second lieutenant, tell me we should have never been in Japan. You know, you should never been in Korea. And I come to find out he was a Russian, and it made me mad, and I popped him. And I got a summary court-martial for it. But he made me mad. You know, we should have never been in Korea. United States should have never been in Korea, is what he said. And it's, you know, here I come from there, went through all the stuff that I went there, you know, with when I went there and everything, and then him to tell me we shouldn't have been there, it just kind of fried my apples.
Did you get
Busted.
busted?
Yeah.
Now, what rank were you?
SFC, Sergeant First Class. I lost a rocker.
And then
Staff.
you went down to staff.
Yeah. It was worth it.
So you rotated back to the States. When you got home, how many years or months or time did you have left?
I only had about 6 months, I think, 6, 7 months. And they sent me to Fort Belvoir, Virginia, right outside of Washington, Fort Belvoir. And they wanted some volunteers to go down to Beckley, West Virginia, to build a bridge down there, a floating bridge. And I had a little experience in Korea with bridges, and they had some people there that was taking 2 weeks to put the bridge across the river. And they're trying to sell this bridge to the United Nations as a universal bridge, because it was a nice bridge. It was 2 pieces of treadway and then a center filler where you could almost get two-way traffic on it. And they was looking for people to go down there. And I went and got a map, and seen Alexander, Virginia was here, Cincinnati was here, Beckley was here, and it was a lot closer. So I went to Beckley. Beckley, West Virginia.
So you went down there to help build the bridge?
We built it. When we got finished with it, going through all the systems that we set up and everything, we put that bridge across in an hour and 26 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah, it was taking them 2 weeks. But it was you know, you just told the guys, you know, you put it across in, you know, 2 days, you get a 3-day pass, you know, and then you just kept cutting. Then we had systems where they just rolled the trucks down, dropped the pontoons off, inflated them. Derek could bring the crane to bring the treadway over and drop it and assemble it, and then a launch would push it up the river to insert it into position. And we ran into some trouble one time after we built one. The river came up, and the river was running like 18 feet per second. It was a high velocity site. We pushed ground out to make a high velocity site anyway. And we went down and looked at it. That bridge was bowed up from the force of the water raising the pontoons, but on each end it was anchored at like piers, metal piers in the ground, and cabled into where they, you know, but you could jack them up and down. And we had to relieve some pressure off of the bridge, off the center. We was out there trying to cut some cables and slip some pontoons out from underneath it to relieve the pressure, let it come back down before it just tore it all to hell back. And we were getting it done, and we slipped 2 or 3 out, and all of a sudden I heard something like an M1 crack, and a cable broke. There was 2 1-inch cables. There was 4 on each side, anchored into a dead man, and one of the cables broke. And when I hit the deck, all I could hear was something that sounded like a buzzsaw going across over the top of my head. Fortunately, it never cut anybody, because it would have cut you in half. I mean, there was so much tension on it that it just, 1-inch cable, snapped it like a peanut. just, you know, you could hear it. And that was one instance. And another time we were putting a bridge up to get down to the, you know, the best time. We put it up under combat conditions at night. And they picked that treadway up, 4-legged cable and an I-ring, and they picked it, treadway weighed 2 tons. They pick it up and swing it out. They use cable because you could see it fraying all the time. You use a chain, you can't never see if it's got a break or not. But that eyelet, that all them cables were, they hit it on the hook. And they just picked it, and I was out on the far end of that pontoon, and they was swinging that thing out, and that eyelet broke. And it hit that pontoon next to it and flopped over and hit this one. And I went up in the air and out in the water. And why I didn't go that way, you know, toward the ground, I don't know. It probably would have killed me. But I went in the water. And there again, it was running about 18 feet per second. And I got hold of a cable. I don't know where it came from or what it was attached to. But I got a hold of that cable. And I was holding on to it with dear life. And I also had a belt, it was automatic and inflated. You would just pull a line on it and it popped around and you hit a belt. And somebody went by and I reached and grabbed him I fortunately got him by the back of the collar and held on to him. And I was holding on to him, man, hoping somebody come on. And all of a sudden the lights come on. And one of the other guys was out there with him. His name was Pettigo. He got knocked even further out than I did. And they put a spotlight on him, and a power launch went down to get him, and when they went down, they overshot him and swamped him. This was on the, this was, I don't know, about right after Thanksgiving, I believe. They swamped it. That was the last we seen him until the 29th of January, and he surfaced not 12 feet from where they swamped him. That's how bad that river is for rapids and undercurrent and stuff. That's a new river. That's where everybody goes.
Everybody, whitewater raft.
Yeah.
Wow.
This is above all the whitewater rafting, but its turbulence up there is just unreal. You get up in the helicopter. We had a helicopter there and went up in the helicopter, and looking down at, there's a little town up the road. It was called Quinnamont, and we went up there, and you could see the swirls in the water. You know, it just there all the time. Just, and you never want to go swimming up there. But I'll tell you what, people, and that's where. Not too far from there is where Jody used to live when she was a little bitty kid. She lived right down the river from that on the New River.
Now, for people out there that don't know, Jody is your
wife,
beautiful wife.
Yes, yes, indeedy.
Is that where you met her?
I met her in Beckley
when you were building the bridge.
Well, yeah, we were, but I met her in town. There was some big affair going on in town, something, and they had a parade, and I saw her there, and I thought, you know, I'm going to see if I can date her, and I lost track of her. And then we went up to the VFW hall, and who shows up but her? And I'm standing there talking to a bunch of guys, and she stayed over there talking to a bunch of girls, and I found out later on, she said, who's that guy over there in the white T-shirt? And I just had a T-shirt on. And they told her, and they brought her over. The one girl that she was talking to, I knew her, and I never did tell anybody my real name. She said, "This Joan, this is Timothy." And she said, "Timothy what?" She said, "Timothy Guggenheimer." just to be, you know, not to hide anything, but just to be funny. And when after we got married and everything, her mother and father and all her relatives always called me Tommy. They always called me Tom. But I went back and, you know, rectified the Guckian and everything, you know, but it's still stuck.
It's a funny story. When did you get out of the Army?
I was in 3 years, September 29th, I think. September, October. I think it was September the 29th, 1953.
Tell us how the adjustment to civilian life was.
Well, I got a taste of civilian life when I was stationed there in Beckley, or I was stationed outside of Beckley. I out in the mountains. It was at the base of Quinnamount Mountain, what they call Quinnamount Mountain. There was a little town down at the bottom of it called Macquarie. And then there was a train station about 2 miles up the road after you crossed the river that we were on called Prince. It was a train station, a little wide spot in the road, and it's called Prince. And that's what they call it, the Prince Camp. And being around the civilians there in Beckley and various towns, Raynell, and some of the places we used to run to, I got adjusted pretty good. I had no problems with adjusting to civilian life. When I got out, my oldest brother was working at the International Harvester, and he got me a job there. That's where I worked for a pretty good while.
I kind of wanted to get your thoughts and your views on the current situation over in North Korea. How you think things are going over there? What's your opinion of that?
That guy's a farce. He's parlayed oil, money, and everything else from the other presidents prior to our president now. He took the money he was supposed to feed his people. His people are starving. Outside of Panmunjom, it's ancient. You go to, from what I see of the pictures of that city, it's a metropolis. But that's the only place in North Korea that is. Everybody in there is wealthy. They got swimming pools in the yard. They got cars. Matter of fact, you know, it's as modern, if not modern, more modern than any town we got that I've been around. Even Chicago, you know, you go to Chicago and Busan and Seoul. I have a brother-in-law that worked for a shoe company out of Michigan, and he went to Korea and set up shoe building places and stuff. He took pictures of Seoul, and you would have thought you were in New York at some future date. That's how modern it looks like. And that's what Panmunjom looks like. It looks ultra modern, like Shanghai now. Shanghai used to be a floating barge city. Now it's a ultra modern metropolis, and that's the way North Korea is. That guy took money, and we gave him money. We gave his dad money to take care of his people because people were starving and freezing in the winter. We give him, I don't know, it was $10 billion in oil and everything, and he just give it to the military. The military used it because that's all it gets taken care of is the military people. That's their life. If you're not in the military, I don't know what you do in North Korea other than part of the government. Because there's no, I don't think there's any infrastructure in North Korea to amount to anything because the people are dying, they're hungry, they get thrown in jail, they get beat, you know, you can name anything that you want. And I think him agreeing to do what he's doing, you know, disbanding the nuclear system that he's got, I think it's a big farce, truthfully. I really and honestly, I appreciate the president's efforts and everything to try to get it settled and try to get him settled down with his rockets and everything, but I don't think it's going to happen. I really don't think it's going to happen. He's just one time after another, it's just give me this, give me that, and I'll do this, and give me this, and give me that, and I'll do that, and it's never happened. It's never happened with his dad, and it never happened. He killed their own uncle and stuff, you know, and they just killed people. Well, look at what they did to the kid for stealing a poster or something.
Right.
He comes back with his brain all messed up and he dies. They have no regard for life. They don't have regard for anything except the military. That's it. And as far as I'm concerned, I wouldn't give him a dime, and I don't trust him. If he's standing there and swore on a stack of Bibles, which he never would because he wouldn't have no reason to swear on the Bible. I think, you know he's an atheist, but just don't believe him.
Well, wrapping up Ralph, I just wanted to give you an opportunity. Any final thoughts that you wanted to add?
I don't want to go back.
You don't want to. So you wouldn't go back to see?
Oh, I wanted to go back. I wanted to go back to the Olympics and everything. And Jody and I was going to go to the Olympics, and there was all kind of riots and stuff that was going on at that time that we planned on going back, but we never have went back. I would like to go back, but the economy there, I'd just like to go back to Korea to see Seoul and some of the towns south of Seoul along the line of march that we went up through, see how they fared out. I know they had no roads, they had no infrastructure. I mean, it was all mud and gravel, and some streets were paved in Seoul, but when I seen them, there was nothing but rubble. And Eskom City and a couple other cities there around Seoul were business ports, but there was nothing modern at all. Because this was right after the 5 years after the Second World War, and you could practically call it still prehistoric times as far as that area went. But I would like to go back. I would have liked to go back. Went back at that time, and I'd like to have taken Joan back to see and travel Japan, because Japan fascinated me. My brother Bill was in Japan. He stayed in Japan a lot, and he was instrumental in some of the airborne radar stuff that was brought about, and that's what he worked in. And he spent some time and met a lot of people in Japan, and I would have just liked to take her back and see it, but the economy there, it's, it was prohibitive. It is prohibitive now.
Well, Ralph, I just want to thank you for sitting down with us, and thank you for your service. Thank you for your family service, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
You.